One of which is, I think it's worth looking a little bit about the history of navigation before we come on to how we use the iPhone. And I think it's mainly to demonstrate how easy it is now and how difficult it used to be. So I'm going to show you a few things about the history of navigation, and we'll go on to, I need to share my screen, and right, okay. Can you all see that? iPhone as navigator. And the first thing we're going to look at is where are we now? You may think that's an easy thing to find, but in the past it was extremely difficult. And we need to know where we are now if we have any chance of getting where we want to be. This is a famous quote: "The journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step." Well, if that one step is in the wrong direction, how on earth can we find our way to where we need to be? So how did people do it in the past? Well, when people's only form of transport was walking, they did it by seeing where the moon was, where the stars were, where the sun is, and by the natural things that were around them: mountains, rivers, lakes, etc. And that's fine when you're moving very slowly, but when you start to speed things up, that becomes a bit of a problem. And it was especially a problem for sailors. And they started to develop all sorts of ways in which they could actually find out not where they were going necessarily, but where they were at that particular time. One of the first instruments was a thing called an astrolabe. It looks a very complicated, and I think it is a very complicated instrument, and it uses the sightings on planets and the moon and the stars, and I think it's got a great name. The astrolabe means a gatherer of heavenly bodies. The sextant came along after that and was used for many hundreds of years. The compass, of course, but interestingly, the most difficult thing is this next one. And you wouldn't think that would be the case, but all the previous instruments were quite good at finding what latitude was. And if you get mixed up between latitude and longitude, if you think of latitude as a ladder going up from south to north or north to south, and longitude is the one at right angles to that. So in the late 1700s, a guy called Harrison developed the first reliable chronometer for use for sailors. And although it looks like a pocket watch, you'd need to be a giant. It was about 6 inches in diameter and weighed 4 or 5 pounds. So it wasn't actually a small item. If you're interested in it, now I got fascinated with this. There's a great book called Longitude. Longitude was very, very difficult to actually ascertain, and the English government in the 1700s offered a prize of £20,000. £20,000 in those days was worth several million pounds now. And this guy, Harrison, after about 40 years of trying, actually got it with that pocket watch. But if you see down on the left-hand corner of this wonderful book, you can see one of his earlier attempts at coming up with a chronometer. So that's what people used to do. It was all very inaccurate. Lots of people, especially sailors, died, and it was only when longitude became easy to calculate that was saved. So what do we do now? Well, we use our own heavenly bodies. We use GPS satellites. There are about 30 circulating the Earth, all supplied, I understand, by the American government, free of charge to the rest of the world, which is amazing in this day and age. And they work by sending signals to your GPS receiver, which in our case is going to be an iPhone. And through a means of triangulation, which is all done by your phone, the phone then determines exactly where it is. I say exactly, it's not quite exact, but it's pretty damn close. So that's the background. I'm now going to switch to taking us to the phone. So you'll have to bear with me while we I share the phone. And this is a time when my heart comes into my mouth, because it always takes, there's like a pregnant pause. Okay, we've now got over that. Can you all see that? That's my phone. That's the home screen on my phone. Oh, it's telling me that there's actually a Zoom meeting at 1:30. Down in the bottom right-hand corner of the phone, can you see there's a white circle with a black background? That's actually a virtual home button. Now, I don't know what phones you've all got, iPhones you've all got. Mine's a Model 8, and it still has the home button. And then can you see this red circle? That's because I'm actually using a mouse with my phone, so that you can actually see where I'm going. So we're still on, where are we now? So I'm going to click on Google Maps, and that's showing you where I am. Can you see this blue dot here? That's where I am. I'm at the corner of Monterey Street and Canimbla Crescent. And this is obviously the background at Newport. And can you see this weird thing down here? We've actually got a possible road closure. Well, so anyway, that's where we are now. That's all done by GPS. It converts it to a signal which we can actually see. And but what does a GPS coordinate look like? So I'm going to go here, and then we'll look at the compass. This is obviously a modern version of what we saw before. This is built into the phone. It gives us down here. Can you see these complicated numbers? The first one is the latitude, which tells us we're 33 degrees and some minutes south of the equator, and we are 151 degrees east of the meridian, which goes through, which is a line at Greenwich in the UK. And if we click on the GPS coordinates, it takes us to the map. It's actually gone back to Apple Maps, but it's showing the same information as the Google map did. Okay. So you might ask yourself, what use are GPS coordinates on their own? And one of the big uses is when people have emergencies and they need to tell the police or the ambulance service exactly where they are. Now, it's not too much of a problem telling them where they are when you're in a built-up area, but if you're in the bush somewhere, you need this information to be able to determine where you are, and a lot of the information now is passed on in this way to the services that are rescuing people, and it's always available, and it's something that you're not really aware of, but that is potentially very useful to you. Okay. there's one other thing that I want to show you in terms of being where you are. And this is a nice piece of software called What Three Words. And what they've done is they've divided the world up into, I think it's a huge number, 67 trillion 3-meter squares. And each square has a combination of 3 words which are individual to that particular square. So this again, we're on my house now. Can you see there's a number 2 there, 2 Monterey Road, and these 3 words that tell us where that square is are values, wipes, duck. I mean, they mean absolutely nothing, but they're absolutely unique to that square in the world. And when my son told me about it, first of all, I thought, well, that's a bit of a gimmick. But apparently, emergency services are now using that method of locating people because it's much easier to remember 3 words, 3 unique words, rather than trying to remember the GPS coordinates, even if you can read all the GPS coordinates. Okay, so we know where we are, or we think we do, and we now need to look at where we get to, well, where we want to be. So going back to Google Maps, and if you search in here, and I've already put a search in, and I'm going to search for the Ridges Hotel in Newcastle. Now, you wouldn't normally need instructions of how to get to Newcastle, but we'll just use it as an example. So if we click on there, and we come up with Google Maps telling us exactly where the hotel is. It even tells us, can you see there? It even tells us how much it would cost to book a room there, $133 today. It shows it's on the river, it shows the streets around it, and it also shows places to eat, etc. So that's where it is. Now, how do we get there? You click on directions. It shows you the route. It tells you how long the route is going to be. And in this particular case, can you see here, it's actually telling us there's a speed camera. So it's giving us loads of information about how to get to Newcastle. And if you're going to use your phone in the car, and if you do that, you need to make sure that you've got the correct equipment to hold it in place, or you'll actually be breaking the law. If you click on Start.
Head northeast on Canimbla Crescent towards Wollombi Road.
Could you all hear that? Did you hear that? It's told us how to get out of where I am now onto Wollombi Road. Having said that, that's not the way I would go. So I would actually go another way. And as soon as I make that turn, so I wouldn't go along that blue road past there, I'd actually go along there and then turn left. And within a few seconds, it would recalculate the route and then tell me what I needed to do to get where I wanted to be. Okay, so we'll come out of that. And one of the good things about the iPhone is that if you use your contacts, I'm going to search for a friend of mine called, no, that's got me. Joe. Okay, Joe Blogs. If you click on that, you'll see I've put his address in there. And once you put an address in the contacts, it actually shows you this little map. And if you click on the map, it actually tells you where it is. This is actually in Cleveland, near Brisbane. And if we click on directions, okay, there we go. So you've got the same information as we had before, but for a different journey. But I think it's great that you can actually do that directly from your contacts list. And if you have someone that you don't visit very often, it's worth putting their full address in there, and you've got the directions built in. Okay, so we now know how to get where we want to be, but if we're in a foreign country and we want to look at maps there, the way to avoid high cost of internet, which you may incur abroad, you can actually download maps. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to search for San Francisco. Sorry, I'm getting confused because I've got two keyboards here and I've used the wrong one. Anyway, there it is, San Francisco. So if you're going to visit San Francisco, you can actually download before you leave Australia. And if you click on here, it actually will download it onto your phone, and you can use it without using any internet access. It tells you how big it is, how big the file is, and they are quite large. So you just have to be careful of that. We're going to cancel that. But what I am going to show you is what I've downloaded before, which is in online maps. And sorry, I've clicked the wrong thing. So it's going to download again. Sorry about that. What I should have done is click on the map. Like watching paint dry, isn't it? Okay. That's what I meant to do. That's what I meant to do. And that place there, that's where I used to live. I used to live in Glinton, near Peterborough. And so it just shows that you can actually download maps remotely and then look at them afterwards. Okay, so I hope that gives you a good idea of how you can find your way to places within Australia or within other countries. So we've looked at where we are now. We've looked at where we want to be. I'm going to spend a few minutes now looking at what the phone records about where you've actually been. And I'm going to start by looking at photographs. And these, all the photographs taken by your phone, unless you've altered the setting, will actually give information about the GPS coordinates of where that photograph was taken. So if I open a photograph, and can you see this little sign down here? If we click on that, and then scroll down to the bottom, it says, where was this taken? Click on that. And there it's actually come up with a map of where it was taken. And it was on the Challenger track in the Ku-ring-gai Chase, And we can even find our way there. So this now shows us the route to where that photograph was taken. And you might say, well, what use is that? Well, it might be that you found a very rare plant. Or you just want to give directions to somebody of how to get to a particular place remotely. And you can use a photograph to actually do that. Can you see at the top as well? It says, walking is required to reach the destination. In other words, it's a longer track. Okay. You may feel uncomfortable that your photographs actually record where they were taken. I mean, if you send that photograph to somebody, they can actually tell where the photograph was taken. And you may feel uncomfortable in doing that. You can actually change it. You can go into the settings of your phone and you can make sure that the geolocation, which is what it's called, is not shown on the photograph. But there are other things that tell you where you've been too, which I only discovered recently. And the phone actually records places that you've been and puts it up as a list. It's deeply hidden within settings, but it is there. So again, if you're uncomfortable with that, you need to explore the settings and change it so that it doesn't record where you've actually been. I don't have a problem with it, but you might feel that it's an invasion of privacy. So that, I think, is about where I will bring it to a close. If you have any questions, I'd be pleased to try and answer them. If there are any things that you would like to be done in the future, for instance, about iPhones, if you let me know, I will try and build those into the program that we've got set up for the coming weeks. So.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
I'm going to unmute everyone now, and then if you want to ask a question, you can put up your hand and I'll take you one by one, and hopefully Peter will answer the question. At the end of the lesson, Sue Martin, who's listening in, is going to give a talk very quickly about what she's presenting next week on what happens to all your digital assets and your assets if anything ever happens to you. So I'm going to unmute you all now. Should all be unmuted. Paul, did you want to ask a question?
I would like to. Thanks, Greg. Peter, just as a bit of a promotion, in 2 weeks' time, I'm doing this course on Irfan View as part of our series. And one of the options in Irfan View is the option to strip out all of that information that's behind the picture, so that when you want to send them on, you can bulk do them. You can do 1,000 at a time if you wish to, and it strips out all that information. So if people are interested in getting rid of the information that's already on their photos, this will show you how to do it.
Yeah, you can do it internally on the phone. If you wish to send a photograph to a particular person, you can actually strip that metadata out of the file on the phone within the settings.
Who would like to ask a question next? Ron Smith. Unmute yourself, Ron.
Right, Peter, very interesting. If you disable the geolocation on your phone, is that going to interfere with things like the Emergency Plus app, the compass, etc.?
Sorry, I didn't really hear that, Ron.
If you go into settings,
yeah,
and disable the geolocation facility on the phone, is that going to interfere with things like Emergency Plus and the compass, etc., as to providing your location by GPS?
And the COVID Safe app too.
What was that? Sorry?
I can't be absolutely certain, but I would guess that it will not disable it for the emergency app.
Okay. But I have
Janet.
one other
I
question.
mean, it'd be easy enough to try. You could go into the settings, disable the location services, and then go back into your, the emergency app and see whether it's still recorded any GPS.
Yes.
So that'd be worth checking, actually. I don't.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. Also, when you did the map of Clinton, was it?
Yeah.
There's a flash on the screen that said something like valid until or whatever.
It said what? Sorry.
Valid until, and then there was a sort of date.
Oh yeah.
Do
Yeah.
these maps expire so that if you download them too soon before you go, or what was that all about?
It actually appears to be valid for a year from the,
For a year, okay.
from the date that you actually downloaded it. So make sure you don't download it too soon.
Okay. And then it'll get automatically erased after 1 year.
I don't know the answer to that because
Okay.
I've never downloaded something and waited a year. But it sounds as if it might well be deleted. Yeah.
Thanks very much. Very interesting.
Janet,
Great
you have a
session.
question?
I have a question.
Yes, Janet.
I'm just asking if you incorrectly, like you were starting to download the wrong map.
Yep.
If you hit the escape key, would that stop it when you're downloading something incorrectly?
What escape key? There didn't seem to be one.
And on your keyboard, your top left hand ESC.
This is on a phone, don't forget. You don't have an escape.
Oh yes, you're quite right.
Yeah. No, you're right. On a Mac or a PC, you'd be able to do that. But no, they don't have an escape key on the iPhone, I'm afraid.
Mary Musgrave. You have to unmute yourself, Mary.
When you went into your Thank you, Peter. It was very interesting. Could you tell me, please, when you download the maps, where do you actually go to find it when you're overseas, please?
Yes, good question. Good question.
Thank you.
I did actually show that, but didn't explain it. So, right. Can I actually connect the share screen again?
Yeah, go for it.
Can I do that?
Yep.
Okay. It's easier to show you than to describe to you. Okay. So, can you see on the top right-hand corner, there's my smiling face. Can you see that?
Yeah.
If you tap that, my face won't be on your phone, of course. You will then see that down here, offline maps. Yeah? Click on that. And we've got two, the San Francisco one, which I did some time ago, and the one that I did today, which is the one we were looking at with my ex-hometown on it. So does that explain it for you? Mary?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay.
How would you, Peter, how would you enter a new map onto that list?
You go. You'd search for another place. Look, Berlin. Oh, let's try Berlin. Okay. So there's Berlin. And you then scroll along here. Can you see where it says download?
No. Yep.
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 Click on that. And then click download again. So that would, I'm not going to do it because it'll take a few minutes to actually download it because they're big files. Can you see that's 105 megabytes? So it's going to take a couple of minutes to actually download.
And Peter, this actually works even if you don't have internet. It just works as long as you've got your GPS.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
You don't need internet.
Yeah. That's one thing that I had difficulty getting my head around at times was that this GPS information does not need the internet to work. And I still find that amazing, but it is right. It is right.
One little comment I could make is that, of course, if there's road work or there's extra traffic, these things are not reported if you've got the offline maps. So it's not a great significance, but it's useful to know.
Yeah, that's true. In my notes, you will see there's a reference to a YouTube video, and this shows a guy walking along a street in a town in Germany, and he had 99 phones in a little truck that he was walking along with. All of these phones were switched on. They were all connected to some system, and what it showed was that there's a huge traffic jam, because the way in which Google measure the amount of traffic is by the number of passing phones that are actually switched on. So he caused a traffic jam just with one little truck that he dragged along. It's quite funny to watch. There is a reference, as I say, in my notes to that.
Mary Musgrave, you had another question?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, Peter. I've only ever used the Maps app that comes with the iPhone. I haven't used Google Maps. So
Right.
I assume that the Maps app isn't anywhere half as good as Google Maps. Is that correct, please?
No, it's a pretty good app. It's just that over time I've used Google Maps most of the time.
All right.
Got used to it. But no, the Apple native app is excellent. It's really good.
Right. Thank you very much.
Can I chip in there, Mary? The one thing about the Apple Maps that the Apple Maps doesn't have is the
Yes.
ability to download that Google Maps has.
Right. Okay. Thank
But
you.
apart from that, it's pretty much the same.
Yeah.
Good.
Doesn't Google Maps update for current traffic conditions?
Yes, it does.
Real time.
That was the point of that trick that guy did with the phones. It shows on the map a red line where there's traffic congestion, and you will see that on quite a lot of the maps. You've seen it yesterday, I guess, when people were coming back from the long weekend.
Can I ask, is there a limit to the size of the maps that you can download?
I would say the limit is only the limit of the memory that you have on your phone.
Oh, I see. But once you've used it, can you delete it?
Oh, yes.
So
Yeah.
if I went to England, I could do the whole of England and then delete it when I left.
Can you do the whole of England? I don't know the answer to that. Can you do
Little
the whole
memory.
of the country? It must be a huge file.
So you do it in portions, probably.
Yes, that would be the way I would tend to do it in
Yes.
in areas or cities or whatever.
Yeah. And once you've used it, you can delete it, so it's not
Yes,
taking
you
up
can.
space on your
Yeah.
phone.
Yeah.
I understand. Thank you.
Paul, did you want to comment on that? No. Okay. Any more questions?
Sue had a question.
Sue?
I just wanted to say that when we were in Greece last year, I used the Google offline maps and I made sure I did it in sections. So when we were moving to a different area, I would then select, because you can be, Country Peter, you can be specific in the area rather than the whole of a country. You can select an area. So I did that and then deleted the previous section. But you had to be careful that you didn't delete the one which we were sort of still in when you were moving to the next one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Jan, you had a question?
Yes. Would the Google Maps in the phone work better than the GPS in the car?
Well, the one, I think the big advantage of the phone is that it's being continually updated, whereas the GPS in your car, I've never had a car with GPS, so I'm talking without any experience at all, but that's not going to stop me. My understanding is that you have to pay on a regular basis to update GPS systems in cars, whereas it's continually updated on your phone.
Right. No, I have GPS in the car.
Yeah.
But I did notice years ago, well, a few years ago, I drove to Canberra and
Yeah.
I couldn't download the maps for Canberra until I was nearly down there,
Ah, okay.
which I found interesting.
You can actually use the phone to play back through your car system, as long as your car is equipped with Bluetooth.
I have Bluetooth.
Yes, so you can actually use your phone to actually play back through the sound system of your car. But
Right.
again, I stress that if you're going to use your phone in the car for navigation, you need to have the correct holder for it, because you are breaking the law if you have it in your hand or down on the seat. So you just have to be aware of that.
Right.
Sue Martin had a question. Sue.
I just wanted to say that some years ago, when you didn't have phones with GPS, we had a GPS for our car. And fortunately, I put it into my handbag when we got out into this tiny little Italian village. And we got totally lost, but I was able to use the GPS from the car. So my handbag would say proceed 500 meters. But now, of course, you can use your phone. So if you get lost in a little town, it'll show you how to get back to your hotel when you're walking.
Yeah, yeah.
Good, isn't it?
Any
Is
more
it the
questions?
same for Androids as iPhones? Same principle? Because I've got Google
Yes.
Maps on my, yeah.
Yeah, it'll work in exactly the same
Yeah.
way.
Okay,
Again,
all
I
I need
speak
is the whole.
with no experience, but I'm sure that's the case.
Yeah, well, it looks exactly the
What's in his
same.
head anyway, so it must be true.
Does anyone else have a question?
Thanks, Greg.
John.
Peter, you were asking the rhetorical question, what do we need coordinates for?
Yeah.
And the big area where they are needed, of course, is in marine charts.
Yeah.
There's no other navigation, or very few marks on the ground, so to speak, that you can use for your navigation. So you do need to have your coordinates for that activity.
Yes, of course.
Any more questions? Well, I would like to thank Peter so much for the presentation he did. Absolutely fabulous. And I'm going to go over to Sue Martin, who's sitting with Graham. She's going to talk quickly about her presentation next week. As you all know, you've heard Sue before. She's got into what happens to your digital assets and other assets if you pop off. And it's continually updating, isn't it, Sue?
Yes, it's quite amazing actually. So that's what I've been thinking about it and what to put in and what to keep out. But basically it's a case of if we all today went up in the TARDIS, who would be able to manage the stuff? Have you got enough information and left behind? And principally now, of course, it's not just the shoebox with your birth certificate, it's all those digital assets that we now have. So I'll try and make some sort of sense or guidelines, because in these self-isolation times, we certainly have time to sort things. So that's what I'll be doing next Tuesday.
All right, well, thank you very much.